back to another episode of Leaving the Farm, right here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Studio B, every Thursday night, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Saturday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are a listener-supported radio station, where if you'd like to donate, please visit us at www.freedomslips.com and click on our listener support pages. Every little bit helps. Of course, this month, hockey's already expended to get us up and running on the T3 line, and so far so good. I've been watching Revolution Radio on Spreaker, listening there and listening at freedomslips.com. You can also join us in chat at freedomslips.com, and there's lots and lots of stuff there to look at, including the links, the archives of the links in chat, and just basic things that are being shared on a daily basis. I mean, we're running 24 hours a day on A, B, and of course the Hawk's Nest. There's been some issues raised lately or recently with the funding and everything. Now, Hawk, of course, pays out for everything first. He has to pay the electric and the internet connection first in order to maintain the station. And of course, others are not happy with the donations and Freedom Slips being up and running. So if you'd like to support Freedom Slips, it's greatly appreciated by all of the hosts. I know somebody was trying to slam us this week, and I thought it was very, very interesting for a former host to maintain that there's no transparency, yada, yada, yada. You can go to the chat room at any given moment in time, and over on the left is how much has been raised for Freedom Slips and how much we have left to meet our goal. And that is always available for everybody. And it's just, it's profound what Hawk actually does. What everybody does behind the scenes, and especially Hawk and Kat Weisenberg and so many others that are keeping us up and going for your listener experience. And of course, we are supported by you, and every little bit helps. To get right into it, tonight we'll have a special guest joining us when he calls in, and it's going to be a good one. I wanted to start out with a lot of people are asking about contracting and about all of these little things, civil death, excuse me, and I've been in a heated conversation on YouTube with this false flag agent, and you know, he's claiming to be a man and a citizen and Israelite, and he's maintained that, you know, he enjoys the action of pedophilia. That is always a false flag. I want everybody to be aware of that now. So when you're coming across somebody claiming to be a male or a female and they're promoting pedophilia, you know, that's so far out of the realm of what a pedophile actually does. They sneak around like little snakes in the grass. And these loud ones are there as false flags against males and females to present the illusion that, you know, it's just the everyday citizens. And what everybody needs to realize is that pedophilia and predation of children is so profoundly fiscally beneficial to judges, to Congress members, to legislators, to psychiatrists, to expert witnesses, to all of these individuals and entities and colors. It's not necessarily beneficial to the citizen, and everybody needs to realize who is actually preying on the children, why there are so many privacy laws such as HIPAA and FERPA and CACA, which is the Crimes Against Children Act. That act in itself is a privacy law protecting judges and legislators from being caught out for being pedophiles, for being predatory on children. All of these laws are engineered and designed to protect pedophiles. They're not there to protect children. They're not there to protect women. They're not there to protect men. It's beneficial to destroy the human being. And when we came in and sued Congress and won, of course, they have been found guilty by the evidence of genocide, of human trafficking. And all of these things can be found in a documented record on chooseyourside.org and tammypepperman.org, and of course right here on Revolution Radio. Bo and Rocco show every Wednesday night, 10 to 12 Eastern Standard Time on Studio A, and Leaving the Farm, and so many others who are sharing and evidencing the criminal activity of the Confederacy. Now, they did a huge presentation back in the 1920s into the 1930s, and they were promoting that there was some guy named Hitler killing citizens. Now, if you go back into the record, 1928 specifically, in the world courts, and these are maintained by Congress, in the world courts itself, the Bear Corporation came in to indemnify Poland when the overhead was too costly. This means that the public state or those that were on public employ, child protection workers, psychiatrists, judges, attorneys, all of these things, they were indemnified. And that is what you saw as Nazi Germany. The citizens were all maintained as refugees and moved elsewhere. And that's the point in time we are at now, again, with this failure of the United States Incorporated and the United States of America, which is a style or chain of events. What you're seeing is the indemnification of the overhead, and that's what we wrote into this case. We knew that before the little guy got it. The little guy, teachers and doctors and those that really didn't have much to do with the system were all rolled on at that time, and they were the ones in firing squads. They were the ones in gas chambers, and watching that happen and occur over and over and over again. History always repeats itself unless you change or alter history. Now, this process, it's actually written in the Bible. It's written in Blackstone's commentaries. It's written in the old texts on, regarding extortion and ecclesiastical law, the foundations of what bankruptcy actually is. And to be in a bankrupt state, one is depraved. They're in a bankrupt state. They're in a state of depravity. They do not know who they are. And the action of the exchequer is something so profound in that, the depraved are on the chessboard, of course. Now, formerly, what they were doing was they claimed all of the females' estates back at the Coronation Charter and said, hey, look, we'll hold on to these for you. We'll protect the female and we'll protect these estates if something should happen to the man or the male or the husband. And then they facilitated the deaths of all of the husbands. So they were holding the female's estates since that point in time. And every time she would get married, they were wrapping that millstone around his neck after that. And nobody had access to any of their estates. That is we'll call it the leasing or the excise of the estate itself, because that's when it was cut, that's when it was broken, and that's what allowed interpleading ability of an attorney to come in and say, hey, look, I'll protect you within the negotiorum gestor relationship in the court process, the negotiorum gestio. And this, quote, friendly service was actually maintaining the male as perpetual servant until now. Now, the action of marriage is what everybody knows today is a presentation. You see all of these dresses and flowers and receptions and this piece of paper and legal documents. Now, that's all a show. That's a piece of paper. Okay, so if a female and a male enter into a union or a legalized marriage, but they're not actually married, let me repeat that. If you enter into a lawful contract to be married, to be a union, a lawful contract, that's what you are. Okay, you don't need a piece of paper to designate this or evidence this. You already are married. You act as husband and wife, and you protect each other. Now, under the concept of legal marriage, you have a third party that enters in there, and it's known as the state. And eventually, the divorce rate is 80%, which we're seeing now. Well, why is that? And what is divorce? Divorce in Italian means two voices. It simply means two voices. It's not a repudiation. It's not a dissolving of that union. It's not a dissolving of the millstone around the male's neck. It's two voices. And that's what the court has been laughing about all this time, because the presumption at that point in time is that the male is responsible for the female, of course, under the exchequer laws. However, what if you were never married? Now, if you're married to somebody and she's not speaking your word, she's not actively participating in the contract, she's not contracted at all, she's speaking the word of the Lord God or the other landlord. And what everybody needs to realize is that that's actually evidence that she's married to the state. Evidence that you are married to the state is with a driver's license, with a social security card that you're using, with a bank account that you're using. Contracting. That's the action of marriage. You are married to the state. Now, when we came in with this case, we evidenced these things, and we wrapped the millstone around the state's neck to be responsible for that female or that male, or the psychopath, whoever's entered into contract with the state. That's her husband or his husband, and that thing is responsible in whole for the actions of that product. And that's what Jesus maintained, and that this is where we are. That is the action of the failure of Babel. Once you cut that whore loose, it doesn't matter who that is, male or female, once you cut that whore loose and you quit claim it and you lay it back on the state, that's when they're wailing. That's when they're crying, because they're responsible for that debt. And they're no longer having a benefit holding that estate. Now it's a burden and a millstone around their neck. And that's what Jesus has directed in Matthew 18. He said, for those that harm children, be better that they have a millstone wrapped around their neck and they be tossed into the sea of commerce. And that's another aspect of what we teach here, what we evidence, is that walking atop the sea of commerce is not entering into contract with that thing. You walk on water. You can stand above that, and you can be the player on the chessboard rather than a piece or a pawn. And all it takes is not consenting, not contracting, not evidencing that union, not evidencing that marriage. Now, from the standpoint of the Confederacy back in 1777, when it was formulated as a criminal enterprise, Article 12, of course, pledged and charged you to discharge congressional bankruptcy. That thing created a perpetual union, chain of events, congressional actions, creating a perpetual union, a marriage. And in 1802, the attorneys came in and indemnified all of humanity and started claiming you by states. Each state constitution is, of course, act of enablement. It enables criminal activity, criminal enterprise. And this is what we're dealing with now. You know that in 1933, Congress declared bankruptcy, so they're depraved. And the only entity that's solvent would be the human being. And so all of this time, you've had that millstone wrapped around your neck as its husband, because you're contracting. Article 18 of the Dialogue of the Exchequer maintains, now a husband is to be called to account for a wife, or a wife for a husband, if he or she be not solvent. The disciple comes and says, should a husband indeed be called to account for a wife who is bounder to the king and who has already died, or ought a woman who survives her husband to be called to account for him? The master says, thou hast heard often enough that he who cleaves to a woman is made one flesh. In such way, however, that he or she, or her head, with right, therefore, he is to be called to account for her, for the woman has not the power over herself, but the man over her. Now, if you're subscribing to this matriarchy, this government, this religion, this thing you're patronizing and calling your father and your husband, this is what's occurring. But if the husband have had offspring by her, to which offspring by reason of the wife the heritage is due, and the wife being already dead, the money due to the king has not yet been paid, then that husband is to be called to account in the name of the heir, and coerced, but otherwise not. A woman, on the other hand, who survives her husband and has offspring, and remains in widowhood with it, is to be called to account and coerced by reason of the offspring, and coerced by reason of the offspring, to whom the heritage is due, in such manner, however, that her own dowry shall be spared, since it is the price of her virginity. But if, leaving her children, the woman cleave to another husband, the lawful heir is to be called to account for the debt of his father. That's secession. And it's also holding children hostage. Did you see that part? Or did you hear that part? Now, let me read that again. A woman, on the other hand, who survives her husband and has offspring and remains in widowhood with it, is to be called to account and coerced by reason of the offspring, to whom the heritage is due. So this is a state maintaining that your kids can be held hostage, and that's a means of coercing you into paying congressional bankruptcy off, into discharging that bankruptcy. Now, you know this as CPS coming upon you and alleging that you're abusive, where they take the child and you have to earn the right to be. You know this as adult protection, where they take your parents. You know this is Social Security and all of these other programs that appear helpful on the face, but are such a detriment to mankind. Now, to be a player on the Exchequer board, rather than the pawns and pieces, you would stand above this thing and say no more. You don't claim to be that thing. That thing is a description. The last name is that description. And that's something that everybody needs to wrap their mind around. Again, I was arguing with a priest of Baal recently, and he was claiming to be a man or an individual and screaming and wailing, of course, because the dragon has delegated his authority and he's in failure. But the thing is that when you're claiming those things, you're claiming to be a stock. That's what gender delineates. Gender delineates that you're a new stock, a new species, a new kind of something. And there's a big difference between living in a house, such as House of Alsop, or being a family name. Now, a family signifies a new genus or species of human. So when they described us, Erickson, Johnson, Smith, meaning blacksmith, or silversmith, they maintain a patent on that. That's their property. You need to walk away from that and stop claiming that family name and enter into your own house. You know about the House of Representatives, the House of Galn, House of this, House of Lombardy. That's how they were operating as sovereigns. They're not operating as citizens. They were operating as sovereign states of being without representation. The minute you're represented and you're asking for a representative, you're labeled an infant. You're no longer operating as a sovereign. And under the laws of infants, they have the obligation to administer your estate, you're lost at sea. That's how you're lost. You've not found yourself. You're asking for a representative. You're asking for rights or benefits. And that has to do with somebody holding your estate on your behalf. You're not acting as a sovereign state. I think we've got Bo with us. Bo, are you there?
Yes, Tammy. Hi, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Pretty good.
Thanks for joining me.
Yes, always an excellent discussion. And yes, that old licensing thing kind of sews everything up for the Confederacy, doesn't it?
Oh, it's terrifying because I've had so many people come to me this week, and I mean, shoe after shoe after shoe that are just, they're claiming to be that infant. They're claiming to be that citizen subject to the laws and customs. They're claiming to be a beneficiary. And that's not an heir. That's not a sovereign state. That's somebody who's subject to another. It's a subject, a fee, and a fiefdom.
And they have all the subjects out there, the beneficiaries. Am I going to get my unemployment benefits? Oh, I mean, how bad are they going to soak it to us, sock it to us, whatever, with the IRS? It's just kind of disgusting what these so-called lawmakers, the Congress, our transgressors, passing all these bills and laws, and the sheep are out there cheering them on, and or they're stomping their feet. Either way, they're being patriotic to that thing.
Well, that's the funny part. I wanted to talk about that last week, and I forgot. These bills that Congress is passing right now is so funny and so profound to watch and to see. Now, Congress can pass as many bills as it wants. Those bills are actually handed to the Treasury, but they're evidence not to be protecting humankind. So the Treasury has the obligation not to pay on those bills any longer. And that's what you're seeing. Everything is shutting down, and they're raising each other now to collect money. They're asking for private donations, which is aiding and abetting the known enemy of mankind. And all of these things are playing out right before everybody's eyes. So everybody needs to realize Congress can threaten and say, oh, we passed a new bill for the whatever.
NDAA.
Yeah.
That's everybody's favorite out there.
Right. And then the, government spending and all of these things, they can pass as many bills as they want to. I can send out bills. It doesn't mean that anybody's going to pay them. When's the last time you sent bills all out to a whole bunch of people and expected money and they laughed in your face? And that's basically what's been happening with Congress in recent months.
And they're basically, the way I see it, trying to garner all the people's consent.
Right.
So they can be subscribe themselves and discharge that congressional bankruptcy under 28 U.S.C. 453.
Right. And that's the whole point of why we're here. If you're contracting with them and you're acting as an infant, they have an obligation to protect you as an infant. So you're in the chute, and if they can evidence that you've harmed yourself or others, then they're allowed to garner funding out of the Treasury to protect you from yourself. That's the point we're at now. Now, they're not able to touch those funds. However, if you're consenting and you're married to it and you're allowing it to protect you, then it has that obligation. And I can tell you from absolute experience that protection hurts. You get your head beat in, and they'll rent your body to you. You can get damages if you get beat up by a cop. And when you're subscribing to that, all you are is the whore of Babylon. You are prostituting yourself and getting damages for use of your body. And the judge there is your pimp. The prosecuting attorney there is your pimp. It gets paid to pimp you out. The cops are directed by those corporate counsel attorneys to beat you in the first place. That's beneficial because at that point in time, you're diagnosed. You're diagnosed as somebody in need of their services. You've been injured or brought into law. Have you enjoyed that? I've been, watching your reports lately on the Dean Clifford and everything else, and he's subscribing to this. He's being injured at this time. He's being diagnosed, and he's allowing all of these things, and he's renting his body as a whore of Babylon, and all he needs to do is cut those ties and stop renting himself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite sad. You know, he's behind bars. They're saying, well, I'm winning. I got these guys over a barrel.
Yes, he does. Certainly he does. He's in that cell, and I'm sure he's got them gripped right in his head, hasn't he? I mean, these things are ridiculous on their faces to see. And we've seen throughout years and years and years of doing this how many agents there are out there, and how many false flags, and how many designs and presentations there are maintained by the CIA, and how fun and fabulous these things are. You know, he's got a lot of runtime, and others have gotten a lot of runtime based on his experience and his demise. You know, look at all these people cashing in on what happens to him, and all of these people and informants. I mean, look at the action of the informant. It delivers them up to Satan and the adversary. And again, I've got to put it out there that Jesus said, you know, if you deliver somebody up, your name is death. You are killing them as to civil death, and you will be held accountable. That means that you get to die like they've died on paper, and you no longer have your estate. When you're caught, it's done. It's over. That is the action of secession.
Right. Yeah, we've covered succession before, and it's not what they make it out to be in the history books back in junior high school history.
No, because if they told you that you were actually depraved, you were the one that was being maintained as bankrupt because you have no authority over you. You have nothing. You don't have any government because you're subscribing to a corporation. You're subscribing to a confederacy as your government. And here you are not even realizing that you're married to it. It's responsible for you as your husband. And in that, it's going to diagnose you. It has to diagnose you to make money off of you. It has to rent your body. That is the action of Malthusian theory. That is Malthusian theory. It's the nature of rent. And you can find that by Googling T.R. Malthus, Avalon, the nature of rent. You can find it right at Yale Law Library, avalon.law.yale.edu, and just go look around in there, and you'll find a lot of things that are, you know, upside down and backwards from what you know, speaking English, in comparison to the Latin, which is the language of contract, and of course Greek. You have to go back to the foundation, the inception of language, find out what these words mean, because, you know, earlier you and I were talking about respect. That means to see again. It means to go backwards, to look again at something. And I don't want anybody to respect me. I don't want anybody to see me in another way. I don't want them to call me anything other than I am.
Right. Yeah, I have all these people, well, if you want me to respect you, you know, blah, blah, blah. No, I don't. I don't want you to respect me.
No.
If you want my honor, no, I don't want your honor either. That's a banking term.
Right. And that's the foundation of the bankruptcy, the depravity. If you are in honor, that means you're not bankrupt. You have to be in honor, and you have evidence this throughout the entire case as well. You've always been in honor. You've always had your authority, and the state of being in honor is the only state that can grant liberty. You have to be in honor in order to grant liberty. And Congress is depraved. They're bankrupt. They've said they're depraved and bankrupt specifically. And in that action, they cannot be granting liberty to anybody. And that's very profound. If you know, you go back, you did a video on that one time, liberty as a franchise, and you can find that on Bono's Entertainment on YouTube. And just go search liberty as a franchise, and he explains it in depth. And you know, everybody needs to realize all of these words and all of these things that are used against them.
No, I got that basically off the glossary for the charter of force and chases.
Right, and that goes all the way back to the exchequer. Where are you living? You know, if you're addressing yourself and you're placing yourself in placements, you're actually subscribing to their construct. They have constructed everything out of mean time zones, and so you're living in their places. And going back to the forests and chases, you are vermin. You're the thing that's in their forest, uninvited, and so you get to be, if you want an invitation, you got to get a hunting license. You got to get a driver's license to be in their forest. And you got to get all these licenses and pay your dues and your fees to be in their forest. And that's something that I urge everybody to read the dialogue of the exchequer. I know it's a long one, and you know, the use of language is profound, and you need to have, you know, a Black's Law Dictionary with you. You need to have a Latin dictionary with you when you're reading such things, but in the end, it's worth it. You will find out there is a way to step outside of this. There is a way to hold them accountable, and that's happening now, but you have to not be married to that thing. You can't be contracted with it by licensing and paying your dues and fees and all of these things and subscribing as a citizen. Subscription means that you're underwriting policy. You hear all the time, we're just following policy, we're just doing this policy. Okay, you're underwriting an insurance policy by subscribing. Bottom line. And everybody needs to stop subscribing. Stop underwriting your demise. That's the foundation of insurance. You are insuring your own demise by being the guarantee. When you go to Black's Law Dictionary and look up the guarantee insurance, that will surprise you. And you need to find these things and you know, look at what's going on. Look at what they're doing and how to get out of it and stop contracting. Somebody asked me a little bit ago, just before the show tonight, you know, well, since the birth certificate is a franchise, should I sell it to another? No, because then you're lost at sea again. You don't want to give yourself to another. You don't want to sell your soul. You don't want to go anywhere with your estate. You want to be the holder of that estate in your own house, patronizing your own house, and standing as your own house without representation. And that's something that everybody needs to realize, because I'm so tired of watching your demise. You know, it's terrifying to see these things occurring, and all these agents, and they think there is something so special, and especially this week, you know, we're explaining civil death and all of these things, and there's so many agents out there that are now slamming us and everything else, trying to, you know, discount what we're speaking of. The evidence is there. No, you can't erase evidence. So all of these agents, you know, all you're doing is just blowing hot air at this point. You're a slight irritant, like a cockroach, but really it has no effect. The evidence is already there. And so you can scream and wail all you want to, but in the end, your handler is the one that takes you out. And so the main part of what we teach is for you, the agent, you, the officer, you, the corporate citizen, whatever, to pull yourself out and realize what's going on. Because during Nazi Germany, again, the citizens were all refugees. They were moved elsewhere. Those that were on state employ, agents, everything else, those were the entities that were walked into those gas chambers in front of firing squads. You found them in Auschwitz, because that was the overhead. And when you go back to the world courts and read what happened with the company at Chorzów coming in as the Republic of Germany, Bear Corporation, you find that, oh my goodness, oh boy, it was the overhead. The overhead just got too expensive. The corporate government said, okay, cut them loose. And that's what happened. They culled the overhead. And I don't want to see that happen again, because a lot of these little administrators, these little government agents and everything else, they're not realizing what's coming. They're not realizing the pits of hell is a metaphor. Hell is the, you know, where the king's debtors are kept in the exchequer.
Yeah, the lower chambers of the exchequer.
Right.
It gets right out of blacks.
Absolutely, and everybody needs to be aware of that. I'm not, I don't come on the show twice a week now to hear my own voice. I'm trying to let you know that it's time to choose your side. Choose your side. You have to. I mean, there's no other option unless you want to go be part of that system and be in hell. That's the other alternative, and that's not a good one for anybody. Yeah,
when we tell you these things, and you've done your due diligence to check out and verify what we're saying, because you don't want to just take anybody's word for it, I guess. I mean, that's how I really hammer it home in the learning process, is to look at it for myself and read it. But when you see these things and read them, you're not ignorant anymore. So if we tell you that subscribing yourself as a man or a woman or whatever, any of these titles that they use to drag you in to their system, if we tell you you're not ignorant anymore, especially if you verify it for yourself. Now, if you go on espousing these things, what does that make you? Does it make you stupid? Well, maybe. Or maybe it makes you an agent.
right.
And I couldn't believe, I still can't believe how many actual people out there on the internet they're just paid agents, or state paid agents. So why would they keep going on like this? Are they really that ignorant and or stupid?
Right. And they're not. Useful idiots is what they're called, useful innocents. They're patronizing that thing, and they're paying homage to it, and they might get a paycheck or whatever. But they are absolutely destroyed. I've watched this over and over again. Political cannibalism, I mean, that word sounds nice, political cannibalism. It doesn't sound as bad as it actually is. When you get down to it, in the bottom line, and watching political cannibalism occur, it's actually more like a drawing and quartering than anything else. I mean, they're ripped apart from every direction. Once their peers have them, it's kind of like hyenas at the feed. And it's horrifying to watch.
And it's already happened to some of these people. I mean, this one guy, Rock, when I had him back in the day, we had him on the show because he was fighting a court battle that was similar to ours, went by Sovereign One. He was, practicing all his commercial law and trademarking and registering his name and copyrighting his name. It's just ridiculous, all this stuff, this commercial activity he was involved with. And now he's at the stage where he did some time already for commercial crimes, 27 CFR 72.11. And, obviously I see why now, how that occurred, and he's dug him such a hole that he felt the only alternative now is to have an attorney. So now he has an attorney, and so he's got cognitive judgment hanging over his head, and he's telling me that I am upside down and backwards. I need to go listen to Winston Shroud.
So this guy, he's already got a judgment against him solidified by his attorney. It's called a plea and confession. A plea and confession is actually one it's certified by the attorney, having the attorney's signature on any document when you enter into that court process. And that solidifies the foreign judgment against you. And so, you might get damages later on or whatever else. But again, when you go back to the CUSIP participation program, you get 0.82% of all revenue that's being generated off of your estate.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, oh, goody. So even if you get a judgment, and we spoke about this a while back on when I was interviewing Michael. And he had, you know, the presumption in the mind's eye is that you're winning and winning and winning and winning. And all of that time, he started out with almost $1 million in liquid assets. And the attorneys got it all, and his wife ran away, and it appeared like she was winning for some time, and then she hit, you know, $40,000 in legal fees, and all of her assets were redistributed by attorney. All of his assets were redistributed by attorney. But it feels like you're winning all that time because they're patting you on the back and rubbing your head and rubbing your belly and telling you all sorts of things that you want to hear, which is the action of aberrament. Maintaining a positive statement, but that's all it is. It's just a positive, good job, Sonny, good job, oh, good job. You know, and that's all it is. And all this time, all of your assets are out the door, they're out the window, and the attorney's laughing about it, you know, and especially with Michael, when I was interviewing him, he said, well, after that, my attorney retired. And I'm like, yeah, he ran away with $1 million. You know, but it's like, you know, we have to stop patronizing these things because that is the marriage. That attorney takes the responsibility for you as your husband, of course, and in that, it's using your body to generate revenue. It's taking that responsibility and making you pay all that debt back. And you're subscribing to that debt by claiming to be an individual. An individual has debt. You know, and then a sovereign state of being does not have any debt. It can't have any debt. The Q-STIP participation program, of course, is the action of debenture, and that is, and listen carefully, that is a debt secured by your own earning power. It's not a loan secured by your own earning power that ends up being paid off. It's a debt secured by your own earning power. Those are mortgage-backed securities. That is you, your body, debt pledging itself to secure debt. That never goes away. That debt just stays there forever. It's not like paying back a loan or anything other. That's an actual debt secured by your own earning power. And so you're subscribing to this thing. You're entered into this mutual venture under mutual insurance since the 1600s. And in that capacity, all you are is product. It's just horrifying.
Yeah, and people just love their servitude and being product and producing, and I don't know, what is it, this glimmer of hope that someday it might get better that keeps them going? I don't really understand it anymore. I mean, I used to be there, but it's like so far removed from my state of being these days, it's hard to imagine myself in that state.
Right. But I was forever... you know, going back and forth, and I was in that kind of mindset for a few years there, especially after they killed Donnie. You know, I was waiting for Jesus to come. I was like, oh my gosh, all I need is Jesus. That's all we need. That's all we need, just Jesus, you know, because we have all of this religious indoctrination telling us that at some point in time, somebody's coming out of somewhere, and they're going to save you. Well, then when you go back and read that Bible, when you read the New Testament, when you read these things for yourself without being interpreted by these psychopathic priests or, you know, scribes, whoever else, it is a whole new day, and it's a whole new word, and that's what Jesus said. You know not the scriptures of God, the actual walk of God. Jesus says in Matthew 18, the Son of Man is come to save that which was lost. When you go back to the etymology on Jesus, of course, that means your earth. And so if you're fornicating and giving your earth over to another Lord God to facilitate its demise or whatever's promised you, you're not in control of that earth, and it can be crucified. The Coronation Charter maintains that. All of the murderers are let go, and their debt has to be paid to the king, and all of these things, and all of the females' estates can be held by the king and whoever's the king, and that's another concept that people need to realize. King is a king. It's a sovereign. It doesn't have a crown. It's just there. And
but don't stand on top of the hill and just declare and shout that you're the king, because we know how that turns out.
Right.
What was the story you told me about? The
3-day king.
The 3-day king, yeah.
There used to be.
I know something like that out there. Well, I declare this. And
yeah. So speaking something or writing it on paper does not make it so. Acting as to a state of being makes it so. And throughout history, there's been 1 day and 3-day kings, 4-day kings that have declared that they're king. I'm your king, and it's like that Monty Python skit where the king comes along and he introduces himself, and the peasants are like, "Who the heck are you?" You know, and it's the same thing. They were beaten to death. The king stands up on a hill and says, "I'm your king. You're all my subjects." What do the subjects do? They're like, "What's king?" And it ends up killing him. You know, you can't just say you're something. You have to be whatever you are already. And that's what Jesus was teaching so adamantly. And going back to the definition of marriage, you can find that in 1 Corinthians 7. You want to use King James or go back to Wycliffe's version, translated right out of Greek, something like that, so that you can see it in its basically perverted version. The priests like to pervert things, and you really want the version that you can read and see what these things actually are. And the action of marriage is being married. It has nothing to do with the document or a piece of paper. If you're contracting with the state, you're married to it. If you're contracting with your husband, you're married to him. And these things always have to be seen for what they are and evidenced for what they are. And again, that's the foundation of the exchequer.
But now that Wycliffe version, he never got all the way done with it because they didn't like him translating it so people could actually read it for themselves and see what it meant. You know, so you were telling me the scribes or the priests killed him because
right.
before he could get done with the whole Bible, so we don't have the whole thing in the Wycliffe.
Right. It appears that way, yes. But the
appears that way, so
right.
Yeah.
You go back to, you know, the most profound is just reading Genesis that was transcribed and interpreted by Wycliffe himself, and you see so much of what just happened. Because here you are in your state of being, in your sovereign state of being as God, and all of a sudden you're taking up concepts. It says that God collected light and day. God collected earth and sky and earth and water.
And of course, if they say collected, means took it over, so they're speaking of the Lord God. Right. The Lord God is being spoken of, whom is collecting all these things.
No, that's actually God. They taught you that you were not God and told you, here, this is night and day, this is land and sea, this is ours. And then all of a sudden you've got the Lord God there granting the authority, vesting power in Adam and saying Adam can name all things. Now that's the action of nomenclature and how you're stolen.
I see.
That is how you're stolen. And so you can only vest power, but only an authority can vest power in something else. So here's the Lord God taking up authority and telling Adam, which the etymology on that name means man, telling man that, okay, I'll give you the power to do all of these things. Well, why are you giving me power? I'm a sovereign state of being. And that was never dealt with back then. And that's what Jesus was trying to maintain. Know thyself. Know thyself. And you know, by 2 Corinthians 13, he was just irate. He was like, this is like the third time I'm coming to you now, and you're just not hearing me. And if you want to, you know, proof of my existence, you know, you're going to be looking forever because you don't hear me. You don't want to see all of these things, and you don't want to go on the evidence. You want to go on the consensus reality that the Lord God feeds you. And that's where we're at now. That is the action of education. Education and pedagogy is removing the human being from the ability to be the self, to be a sovereign. Because you've got all of these nice gimmicks and shiny things, and now you're taught to have things and keep things and hold all of these pretty things. And it's so far removed from relativity, it's not even funny. It's sick.
So we get all these attorneys now. Basically, that's your law merchant, and the attorney mindset, I should say. Attorneys, judges are allegedly alleged judges, because none of these judges ever evidence themselves to be judges. They just say they're judges, and all their actions evidence themselves as attorneys.
Absolutely, and a judge in evidence is actually one who views evidence and rules accordingly. That is the definition of a judge, the boundary of a judge. That is what defines a judge, the action of viewing evidence and ruling accordingly. An administrator, an attorney in a black dress, practices law. It determines things. It creates new words like fact. A fact can be an allegation repeated more often than once, and as we all know, Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, came in at one point and said, if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. That's a fact. A fact is, it can be a lie repeated often enough that it becomes a fact, and that's the definition right out of the Uniform Commercial Code Act itself.
And so what people got to see is how this interface between us and Congress is these attorneys, but the attorneys are really just an arm of Congress.
Right. That's all. They're the in Revelation it said the dragon delegates its authority, and that's what they are. They're the delegated authority. So here's Congress, and it delegates its authority, and that brings us back to the acts of enablement. That's what each state constitution was each state was given an act of enablement, enabling them to promote and participate in the criminal enterprise throughout time. And tonight I was going to read that too. The 1933 Act of Enablement that came out of Hitler.
Now, let's see, we're running out of time. I don't know if you want to start that now.
Oh,
your
yeah.
break comes up pretty quick.
It goes by pretty fast when you're on with me. It's just, I'll start it after the break, I guess, because we are coming up on some time constraints.
But the lower house, though, you were gonna, you had mentioned the lower house of the House of Representatives,
right?
Which are all attorneys.
Absolutely.
Now, some of the Congress members were attorneys, and supposedly they gave up their bar license. Or their bar card, because it's not a license, it's just a club membership card, and that's one of the rules. They have to turn in their bar card, but that doesn't stop them from being an attorney if they were one to begin with, because to do that they would have to expatriate, because they have an oath to this fictional government known as the bar, or the American Bar Association.
Right. And then after that, they put on a nice presentation that says they're taking an oath to the Constitution with a clause in there. I take an oath to uphold the Constitution, as long as I am a citizen thereof. Well, they're not citizens. They have oath and allegiance to the bar, maintaining that they're citizens of a fictional government. And, of course, this is all written into our case as well. Because of that oath to a fictional government, that is actually the definition of a prisoner of war under the 1929 Geneva Convention.
And that oath comes under Title 12, which should tell you everything you need to know right there, because Title 12 has to do with what? Banking.
And you can find that oath, the actual oath of the attorney, on 12 U.S.C. Subsection 73, and they're subscribing an oath that they are not hypothecated. They are not the thing that's hypothecated. Human being is. And at this point in time, because of what happened in August, these attorneys and bankers and judges, they were all declared dead according to the Sister K-5 Act. And so now at this point in time, if an attorney is maintaining an oath that they're not hypothecated, they're actually perpetrating bank fraud.
Aww.
It is sad.
It breaks my heart for them.
Well, and we've seen a lot of that come through now. Bank fraud, attorney charged for tax evasion, bank fraud, stealing cars. We'll be back right after the break, folks. Stick around.
What station?
Hi, and welcome back to the second hour of Leaving the Farm, right here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps. We are a listener-supported radio station. And if you'd like to donate, please visit us at www.freedomslips.com and click on our listener support pages. Every little bit helps. Again, I'd like to remind everybody that Hawk has expended so much. I mean, last month and this month alone for the T3 line, now that we're running and we're up and at a higher speed, you'll have a better listener experience. Please donate if you can. He's already expended those amounts, and again, every little bit helps. And you know, you can go to chat again, and on the left side of the screen, you can see what the goal is and how much we've collected in donations this month, and just join us. Again, we have a store. You can visit the Freedom Slip store. You can donate and you know, get things in return. The seed pack is amazing, and just visit our site and see what's there.
Yeah, and it's not like Hawk was able to quit his day job and do this. He still works.
Right.
So
right, and he keeps us
says
here.
A lot right there.
Absolutely. Before the break, we were talking about the House of Delegates and acts of enablement and all these things. Now, out of Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition deluxe, the definition of House of Delegates says, 1, the body vested with the control and administration of the American Bar Association. Number 2 is the lower chamber of the state legislature in Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. Now, that basically says it all. Congress has control, absolute control, over the Bar Association, and that's something that most people don't realize. And the reason we're bringing this up, folks, is because of the 1871 quote organic constitution of the D.C. District
Organic Act of 1871.
Absolutely. And all it is an act of enablement, enabling this state to operate, yada, yada. There's a little bit of a difference between...
so it's almost like another state.
It is another state.
It is another state.
It's more like a city because they have a mayor over it instead of a governor, but the mayor has gubernatorial powers. So you have the same thing as any other state, but now you have a presentation. You got big buildings and lots of stuff to patronize, and you know, at the end there, upon facilitating D.C. as a corporation, they'd actually paid off the treaty. Let me go grab it here.
Had to do with the body of water, I believe.
Yeah, it was the British-American Diplomacy Treaty for the final settlement of the claims of the Hudson Bay and Puget Sound's agricultural companies, July 1st, 1863. And they had facilitated the final settlement agreement. Settlement, of course, coming from the word insurance. And that's where they formulated this presentation. It was basically a presentation, and it's still the same old. It doesn't change your status, and you can go right to the 1929 Geneva Convention and find out you can't change your rank or status once you're a prisoner of war. You know, but there's all these people that are trying to claim that 1871 act as if it's going to protect them instead of enter them into the game, into the exchequer, and into the hold of hell.
And the Patriots, you know, they want to, you know, espouse that is the fix-all, because the Congress created treason and became a corporated state without the consent of the people. And, well, they did that back with all the other states, so what's the difference?
Right, and they were only acts of enablement, enabling the criminal enterprise. And
to me, it was like they were putting it in the people's face to make it obvious, you know, like a boot in their face, saying, "What are you going to do about it?"
Right.
This is Congress. This is the Confederacy.
Right. And then you've got agents. You've got agents throughout the history of mankind that are promoting these things, and I'm a patriot, I'm red, I'm blue. You've got people like Rod Class out there being a state D.C. citizen with his PAG certification. Okay, that's a citizen. He's
Private Attorney General.
Yeah, he's subscribed.
Private anything means foreign.
Absolutely, and without immunity and without sovereignty, he can never sue them. So forever, he's going to go into court, and they're going to say, yep, we're administrative, and he's going to say, yay, they admitted they're administrative, they admitted they're administrative. What's he going to do about it?
Yeah, because he's a citizen, so he's already said that, well, administer me, now he wants to complain about how they're administering him.
Right, and that's something that was really apparent to me because, all this time I've been watching Rod Class, and I went down and met him in North Carolina at one point, and he seemed like a nice guy, but as of, I think it was October, Rod Class pled guilty to the charges that were against him, and he's still harping on the fact that, we can get us out of here, we can do this and this and this, and we got to file those documents. Now, all of these
got some more paperwork.
Yeah, all of these words, and he's still in the same position, and he's driving and leading other citizens to the same demise. So he has evidenced himself as an agent.
Yeah, I will agree with one thing he says, in that his paperwork is some of the most dangerous paperwork you'll ever see.
Absolutely, because he's driving and leading, and that's what Jesus had spoken about with the leaven of the Pharisee. The disciples came to him, and he had warned them. He said, don't teach what the attorneys are espousing. Don't teach those things. And he had called it the leaven of the Pharisee. Now, the word Lord stems from the word loaf, of course. So leaven stems from the word Lord. So you're teaching the Lord's word instead of God's word. And the most profound was when the disciples came to him and they said, well, we brought, you're just mad because we didn't bring any bread. And he says, what the heck are you talking about? You brought bread before time and time again, 7 of the 1,000 loaves, and yada, yada. And he says, I wasn't speaking about you bringing me gifts. I was speaking about the leaven of the Pharisee, the doctrines that you're teaching. You're teaching the Lord's word. And again, and this is something so sad, and I need to get this across to all of the agents out there that have come up against us. You will be held accountable. You are being held accountable now, and this is your opportunity to skirt out of that as best you can. Your handlers are not telling you what's going on. Your handlers haven't given you the genocide doc or the human trafficking order. They're not giving you anything, but they are taking you into hell, the exchequer. And you need the opportunity to defend yourself because sometimes, you are innocent. You don't know that you're protecting a criminal enterprise or you're protecting a bank over a human being. And so this is your opportunity to get out of that system and away from the line of fire and political cannibalism, because I hate seeing it. I do. I don't like the bloodletting. I like the accountability. I don't like what they do to you and each other because they are psychopaths. They don't have any empathy. They don't have any feelings for anybody else. And at that point in time, it's just horrifying to watch.
Well, you have to keep in mind that they have evidenced themselves as psychopaths. So, yeah, I mean, the body, it looks the same as ours, and in a lot of regards acts the same as ours, but in their brain they don't have that frontal lobe, which is where all of the capacity for empathy comes from.
Right. The ability to feel another is within frequency. It has nothing to do with, speaking, use of words. Well, you've seen it. You've had psychopaths tell you they love you, but their actions are not love. They're hateful. They're disgusting. They'll deliver you up in a heartbeat because that's what they function as. They don't function as a being that is capable of loving another or feeling for another.
Right. Well, like the old song goes, don't tell me you love me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
no,
just...
I mean, yeah, you can, but you can say that to people. It makes them feel good, especially if you mean it and evidence it. Not if you tell them you love them and then you
turn around and stab them in the back or castrate them using the courts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically that's bad, okay?
Right. And that's something that these psychopaths are learning now. The action of marriage is the action of marriage. The statement that you're married doesn't mean anything if you're not married. And if you can tell your husband you love him and then turn around and castrate him using the courts, that's evidencing that you're not married and, in fact, you're married to the state. That is the evidence. And it doesn't go away. And that's something that the psychopaths just don't get. They do not get it, that they are held accountable by their works already. That is what Jesus was maintaining. You are known by your works and actions already. They've already occurred. You've already indicated in evidence that you are a psychopath by your works. Now it's time for you to be held accountable. Not this whining stuff, not saying, oh, it's your fault, it's your fault. No, it's that guy's fault over there. Or changing the subjects. That's another thing that was very, very profound lately, having to speak with a psychopath within the last couple weeks or so. She doesn't get it. I mean, she can't conceive of any reality whatsoever, and that's her downfall. It's already done. She's already evidenced what she is, and she's going to be held accountable.
Well, that's why we don't litigate these things under the public law. It either is or it isn't.
Right.
By the evidence.
Right.
We don't come in with stare decisis and get consensus reality and case law and all this stuff that just plays into the law merchant's hand, keeping evidence off the record.
Right. That's the bottom line, is revelation. You can't reveal anything if there's no evidence. If there's evidence, it's revealing. That's what revelation is. To reveal. The apocalypse means to bring forth from a hidden state, apo and calyptine. Yeah, that's where we're at now. It's no longer hidden. You're known for your works and actions. Bottom line, period. And we're not going to go backwards and say, well, it was because I was raised that way, or, well, if I was in the times of my father. And Jesus said that too. He said, woe unto you, and he espoused woe, and then all of a sudden he says, you're not going to play that game with me. You can't tell me that, you were raised that way. You can't tell me that, this is because of some external force placed upon you. You already did this. You did this with intent to harm, and you evidenced your intent, and that's our whole process is, are you sure you want to do this? Because this is unlawful, and they walk forward and do it anyway. That's the evidence of intent. With knowledge, you just did it again, and you were given the opportunity to not do it again and presume innocence, but you did it again. And now you are guilty, absolutely guilty. That's the criteria for guilt, is the with knowledge and intent, knowledge and a forethought, you did it. You had knowledge that it was wrong, you did it anyway, and that doesn't go away. Never goes away. That's what evidence is.
Yeah, the problem with going into their courts and pleading for anything, hoping that you're going to get a favorable outcome, is that you've already granted jurisdiction by going into their courts, and you've already agreed to all the stare decisis, attorney work product, doctrine nonsense. So, and then, not to mention the fact that you're subscribing yourself as a negotiable instrument to offset congressional bankruptcy for the Confederacy under 28 U.S.C. 453.
Absolutely.
And it just goes on and on, and this pro se says, well, I got some new paperwork here. And,
right.
And insanity is defined, I think Einstein said it, by doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Right. And that's one of the saddest things. We've had a lot of people come to us this week and say, what if I gave back my birth certificate? What if I did this? What if I did this? And I had one, and I'm like, you're known for your works and actions. And she says, no, I'm not claiming to be a citizen. I said, yes, you are. You're with a license. You're with a medical license. You're with all of these things. You are evidencing yourself as a citizen. No, I'm not. I've done my paperwork. No, you haven't done anything. The paperwork doesn't mean anything if you are going to subscribe and be married. You need to do the paperwork again. Until you are standing, that paperwork means nothing. And I want everybody to realize what a year and a day is. The common law time, this is out of Black's Law, 7th edition deluxe. The common law time limit fixed for various purposes, such as claiming rights, exemptions, or property, such as rights to wreckage or estrays, or for prosecuting certain acts. So called because a year was formerly counted to include the first and last day, meaning that a year from January 1st was December 31st. So a year and a day would then mean a full year from January 1st through January 1st. Also termed year and a day, formerly in Scots law, zer and day. See year and a day rule, year and a day, and waste. Now, if you do the documents and you forgive yourself and you come in as the executor, and then all of a sudden you go back and you get a license, you're a citizen again. That's your intent. With intent, you are a citizen of another entity. You are no longer a citizen of your house. You're no longer in your house. You're somewhere else, and you are a prisoner of war of that entity. If you do the documents and you go out and you contract with them in some way, you're still contracting with them. You're still married to them. They're responsible for you as your husband. And that's something that everybody needs to wrap their mind around. I went through it. It's a trial by fire, just like Jesus said. You walk along, they come upon you, they want to contract, that's their job, that's their function. They're going to offer you all sorts of things. They're going to promote the force upon you by which to offer you all sorts of things. You must not consent. If you consent, you are contracting with them. If you hold them accountable, you're not contracting with them. You are the sovereign state. And this is something that I cannot do. I can't pull you away from whatever you're choosing as a father. That is the foundation is free will.
Right.
And I cannot alter free will. So if by free will you're contracting with that thing, it's by free will you're contracting, you're married to it. And that's something that, it's hard to teach that and hard to impart that to the students because, they've been in a society that teaches human ease and everything's done right now. They can get welfare benefits right now. They can get all sorts of things right now. But it takes time to evidence your being and evidence that you are be-living, that you are not contracting, that you are standing, that you're no longer lost at sea. And if you're lost at sea, you're claiming all these titles. And in doing so, when you're doing that, they're diagnosing you as a vessel, they're repairing the vessel, and they're going to charge your estate by which to do so. That's why you're finding yourself with all these charges. That's why Dean Clifford's in jail. That's why so many others are in jail, because they're diagnosed now based on their subscriptions, underwriting policy, and that is what's going to occur. Now, on an update on Chadwick Sterling, 2 weeks ago, I think it was, during one of my shows, he was being attempted on, and there was a driver of the vessel, which I use that word, driver, because he's a citizen, and what he had done, Chadwick Sterling was claiming the proper name. Chadwick Sterling was fine. Everything was fine. The vessel was not towed, yada, yada. Now, this other individual had claimed the first and last name, so he's charged with using a fictitious name. He's actually charged, and it appears like it's under 18 U.S.C. 1342. He's asked to be addressed by a fictitious name or address, and that's all it takes. That is the facilitation of civil death. When you are a felon, when you label yourself a felon by accepting being posted by mail or otherwise, that is civil death. You're giving up your estate. You're abjuring the realm. You've been maintained a felon, and that's why they're holding your estate for you. And that, we need to really, really, really be aware of our surroundings and what's going on. Again, I never got word back from Curtis Kallenbach whether or not he had quitclaimed this guy.
Well, speaking of which, do not use any of those documents out there by Curtis Kallenbach that are his version of the executor appointment and the absolute forgiveness document. yeah, you can find his and you won't find ours, and there's a reason for that. But so if you find one out there, you better not use it. And, you know, if you want to, you know, I no longer put my executor appointment and forgiveness document out there as templates or otherwise, because too many people are just leaving John Henry Smith and something Street. They're not even reading the stuff. Yours are out there, Tammy. We put yours up there. It's the female version that evidences the Sesta K. Vi Trust. And if you pay attention to what we're saying and what we're telling you, you can extrapolate back to the male version of those documents. And I will check them for you, okay? But I'm not going to just hand them out freely anymore. That's your test. If you want to walk this path, figuring out how to write those for yourself is your test, because you're going to have to walk them and talk them after you record them, or not, because if you can't walk and talk them, you're just going to go right back in and recontract with the state.
Right, and we've seen that a lot. We've seen males come in and do the docs, and all of a sudden they're calling me because they got an attorney and they don't like how things are turning out. And again, that's solidifying the judgment against you the minute the attorney makes an appearance. That judgment is already put in place. You have a judgment against you because you hired an attorney. And that's the bottom line. That thing is representing you as a citizen of that government. You're no longer in your house. And that's something that, I mean, I like your stance, Bo, because, you know, watching what has occurred, they're not able to stand. They're not standing. And we've done, you know, many different variants on the process, attempting to, you know, protect others in some way. The ordinance of the estates, you can protect another house in the ordinance. Do not put somebody into your house that does not do the F&E docs, of course. But the ordinance is your law, so you're maintaining a law. If that individual entity being is not adhering to your law, it's very simple to get them out of your house. The quitclaim gets them out of your house, yada yada, so that they're not a liability on you, because we've seen so many of these things come through where, you know, subscribing to an attorney, running back into court. Today again, somebody was on, you know, one of the threads, and they were telling me, well, you know, I've done this, I've done your docs, and then all of a sudden, yep, and I compelled their oath. I compelled the judicial oath. So, okay, what they're doing, though, is they're patronizing that judge. They're saying, okay, I want you to make sure that you're discharging congressional bankruptcy as me as the product here.
Right, I'm the negotiable instrument, Judge.
Yes.
Negotiate me, please.
Yes, and we have to realize what we're doing, because the docs, if you walk out of them and you subscribe to that system again, if you're a citizen of that system again, they have no, there's nothing there. You have to be able to stand on them and realize what they say. They say that you are the sovereign, that you're no longer asking for representation, that you're no longer the franchise, that you're taking over that franchise, and you're grasping it and holding it as yours. And so everything that you do after that point in time is holding them accountable. You are above them at that time. The F&E docs say, and the fee schedule and the ordinance of the estates say, I have authority over you. You are no longer going to trick me out. Nope, you're not going to do that. Nope, you're not going to do that. And that's something that people need to realize, because you need to be able to stand. The minute you walk out of their system with the F&E docs, the first thing they're going to do is try to post you in some way. You have to return that. Return to sender, unacceptable mail, 18 U.S.C. 1342. No, you're not going to post me. That's unlawful. I'm not accepting or assuming or using or assuming a fictional name or address, so I'm not a felon. That's the first thing that you need to do.
Yep, and that comes back to your dissenting to that Treaty of Amity, Commerce, and Navigation from 1794. That's where that comes from directly.
Right. But if you accept mail in the name of the fiction, boom, you're a citizen. You're assuming and using that fiction. And it's not hard to step away. How long did it take for us to make a stamp? I think it was $15 for a red stamper, return to sender 18, unacceptable mail, return to sender 18 U.S.C. 1342. That says it all. And everything, for the first few months, you get a lot of mail that comes to you, and keep on stamping it. And it doesn't matter what it is. I need everybody to hear me now, because we've had so many that, they'll return mail, return mail, return mail, return mail. Then all of a sudden they'll get something that seems exciting. They open it. Okay, you're done. You're done. You just accepted and assumed that fictional name. Done. Game over. Now you need to do the docs again, or just keep on subscribing to that other daddy.
Yeah, well, one thing you can do is try to prepare for this a little bit, like Rocco was saying. You can't just jump out of this, especially right now with the problem of the cold, and people need to have their heat on.
Right.
You start doing that with your utilities, and you're still going to have to, pay those utilities, but how you novate. I mean, you don't want to accept the mail. You want to go and get a money order or something like that. Have somebody else, use their checking account. You're not going to be using a checking account anymore if you're doing that.
Right.
Because that's subscribing and posting yourself as well.
Right. But it's not that hard. There are other ways of facilitating everything, and it's not that hard. And a lot of the issues that we're seeing is that people have a certain standard of living that they're used to. They have to have these special things. They have to have these special trinkets. They have to have these games or the television programming or whatever else. You need to prioritize what's more important. And bottom line, for most of everybody that we're dealing with, is the aspect of the children versus job, or the children versus licensing, or the children versus whatever. And I'm not going to give you the answer, because I'm not going to alter your free will, but I can tell you that children are most important to me, and they're most important to both. They're most important to many others who are standing. The licensing aspect is nothing. Toys are nothing. Trinkets are nothing. Anything of monetary value has no value whatsoever when you're faced with a child in one hand and stuff in the other. Yeah, that's something that, okay, I'll put it on the line. That's depravity. If you, a human being, are not protecting children as to your obligation, you are depraved. You are bankrupt. That's the bottom line. If you are not protecting members of your house, you are depraved. You are bankrupt. If you are subscribing to the other daddy's word, you're bankrupt. You're depraved. Now, under that, under ecclesiastical law and the game of the exchequer, the rules of the exchequer, anybody who's depraved is responsible for that debt. That's a debtor. Now, you can either evidence yourself as a debtor, or you can evidence yourself as a sovereign state. Those are your two options.
So just to recap, anybody out there telling you to ask for the judge's oath and bond, that's a, what would you call it, a false flag?
Absolutely. That's an agent doing that. Those that are teaching that are actually delivering you up, because the minute you compel their oath is to discharge congressional bankruptcy using you as a negotiable instrument.
And it's absolutely sick when you think about it, because they're perpetuating human trafficking.
Right.
So there's another aspect of shoeology.
Right. And there's a lot of them. I mean, this last week has been just hectic all over the place with these agents coming against us. And, you know, I got another notice from Louis Ewing's talk show tonight, too, for the first time in a long time.
Oh, yes. Good old Louis Ewing.
He's back on the scene.
Speaking of false flags.
It's been interesting.
Yeah, so if you want to be a pro se wiener, you can subscribe yourself to all that law merchant stuff and become a negotiable instrument just like Lewis.
And he'll help you. He'll deliver you up. That's delivery. Delivery. No.
And they have slippery tongues, these deliverers.
Right.
Very slippery tongues, and they'll make it sound good. They'll even throw in some Bible verses and some religion for you to help steer your mind in that direction.
Absolutely, and that's what I was experiencing.
Especially that Old Testament. They love that Old Testament because that's a manifest for government.
Absolutely. And that's what government is. Religion is patronizing something in exchange for protection. Government is patronizing something in exchange for protection. Constitutional theory is patronizing something in exchange for protection. Democratic theory. And, of course, you have Stockholm Syndrome, patronizing your captor in exchange for protection. And you need to realize who your captor is. When we talk about delivery, it's actually the aspect of livery in season. And out of Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition deluxe, the ceremony by which a grantor conveyed land to a grantee. Livery of season involved either 1, going on the land and having the grantor symbolically deliver possession of the land to the grantee by handing over a twig, a clod of dirt, or a piece of turf, called livery indeed, or 2, going within sight of the land and having the grantor tell the grantee the possession was being given, followed by the grantee's entering the land, called livery in law. This applies to delivery of a child, livery in season, the ceremony of birthing a child in a hospital room, that is symbolic. You know, there's your little twig or clod of dirt. Marriage is that you're delivering property to another and renting it to them, and legal marriage, and all of these things you need to be aware of, folks, because these things are happening to you. This is human trafficking. It's genocide perpetrated against the human race by the psychopathic race, and you just have to be aware. That's the bottom line. Here's, this week we've been talking about the judges being charged and everything. I thought it was very interesting and poignant to see Texas GLPvote.com, which is, of course, a Republican site, conservative site. They have a new report out. Super judge tricks. Dallas District Court judge charged with strangling girlfriend. So this is funny because the Republicans are demonizing the Democrats. What is it with,
yes.
Quote, what is it with Democrat officials and candidates and domestic violence against women? Perhaps this is the real, quote, war on women. Remember last election when the Democrat candidate for Harris County District Attorney Lloyd Oliver equated domestic violence with sexual foreplay, saying that for some people, part of their lovemaking is to beat one another up. Now, that's a false flag, right? I mean, that's somebody coming in and saying, oh, it's just playing, it's just playful. And these are lawmakers, by the way. And but this judge down there in Harris County, he was arrested and charged on assault charges, third-degree felony punishable by up to 10 years in prison. Dallas County Court Judge Carlos Raul Cortez is accused by his girlfriend of strangling her and then dragging her by the hair to the balcony and then strangling her some more. The links includes access to police records wherein the girlfriend described a horrifying scene. Now, this judge has claimed that he was trying to save her from herself. She was trying to jump over the balcony, and so, of course, his handprints and finger marks are all over her neck. He was trying to drag her back to safety, from what he's claiming. But I like watching the political cannibalism. These Republicans then bring in the aspect and vilifies him some more. Quote, the judge has been in the spotlight for other trouble as well. Judge Cortez is involved in an Ashley lawsuit with Dallas attorney. The judge filed a lawsuit in 2010 claiming that the attorney defamed him. The judge has spent at least $100,000 in campaign funds in an attempt to keep potentially damaging details of his personal life from the public eye. The Democrat judge was first elected in 2006 and is up for re-election next year. So this cannibalism, if everybody can follow this one, you will see the drawing and quartering of these folks as they take each other out. And, who knows what's going on? I know the 2009 domestic violence
what was it, an act?
No, it was my mind just went blank. It was a Delphi survey, domestic violence survey of 2009, was only sent to domestic violence shelters.
Oh.
And so in this, the questions were, are you a victim of domestic violence? And these things were self-reporting. Well, that domestic violence shelter survey came back and said 3 out of 4 females in a domestic violence shelter are maintaining false allegations. Only 1 in 4 female victims are victims of domestic violence. Now, the media forgot to tell you that that was a survey sent out to domestic violence shelters. So their reporting said 1 in 4 females are victims of domestic violence, and it creates this big illusion that, oh my gosh, that's 25% of the population. No. The Department of Justice says 800,000 females and 800,000 males are victims of domestic violence each year. That means less than 1% of the population. But the domestic violence survey says that 75% of the females claiming domestic violence are not victims of domestic violence. And that was a self-reporting survey. Now, this judge, of course he's being politically cannibalized, but because of what they've allowed to fester as judges and the court system itself, based on their special drawing rights directives through the Department of Justice, they've maintained that false allegations are okay. That's what they've lived on all of these years. That's how they make their money. That's how they get kids off of their families. That's how they separate families.
And people wonder why there's no justice.
Absolutely. Well, the judges are eating it now. This is called eating crow.
Yeah, right. I meant to say that's why people have wondered why there was no justice.
Yeah.
And of course, you can still find yourself in the same situation if you're subscribing yourself to be the negotiable instrument. So
absolutely, because if you're protecting that thing and she's married to the state, you're going down with her. You have to hold her accountable. You have to cut the horror babble off from you in order to lay it back on the state.
Now, did you see this one with bin Laden's son-in-law's attorney? Who's being charged with tax. He's got tax problems, but his son-in-law, still wants to keep him on. Let's see, it says this is from Reuters. Sulman Abu Ghaith, a son-in-law of Osama bin Laden, charged in connection with the September 11th, 2001 attacks in the United States, refused on Tuesday to jettison his defense lawyer, who is himself facing federal tax and wire fraud charges.
Aw, another attorney. That was like that poor guy a while back. His attorney was under charges too, so he lost his attorney. That's sad. They're really, really, really coming down hard on these attorneys. Now, what's that attorney charged with?
Well, let's see here. U.S. District Judge Lewis Kaplan, who is overseeing the case against Abu Ghaith in a federal court in New York, found that Abu Ghaith had knowingly assumed a potential conflict of interest despite the judge's recommendation that he consider himself a new lawyer. They're using the nice word there, lawyer.
Aww.
Let's see, the defense lawyer Stanley Cohen was indicted last month for failing to report more than $3 million in income to the Internal Revenue Service. Case against Cohen was brought by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan, the same agency that is prosecuting Abu Ghraib.
Wow. So what they're doing here is usually that looks like a posture to get out of these charges. They'll get out on a technicality or whatever, so they'll bring another charge against him later. So they're establishing cause right now to maintain these trials for long periods of time and conflict of interest. And these are things that they can bring up on appeal, but these are also things that they do to citizens. So this poor citizen or whoever, he gets just ran through the court system forever. He'll win his day in court and they'll say, oh yeah, that was conflict of interest, we'll have to retry you. He's sitting there in jail that whole time. Or he's sitting wherever and with a bond, or he's having to pay these whatever, and it's just it's sick. That's part of the game. But I like to see that the attorneys charged with tax evasion and things like that, they're all guilty of tax evasion because of the IALTA trust. They've been sticking their money into trust accounts and not paying taxes all of these years anyway. So as soon as that starts being dealt with, then I'll be even happier.
Yeah, because that's wealth. Again, it's more wealth that they've extracted from us, stuck in their coffers, and it needs to go back to human beings.
Absolutely, and that's another thing on the cognitive judgment. When you have the cognitive judgment, when that judgment is solidified against you, you're not seeing that. It happens at the inception. So those monies go into the IALTA trust. They sit there drawing interest. Now, you yourself, most people are in the court system for 4 years after that. Even considering a family dispute, family law case, you've got insurance settlements, you've got accidents, car accidents or whatever. The judgment is already certified against you. That money's already in those IALTA trusts, and they're drawing interest. They're maintaining interest on those accounts. And here you are just watching the game play out after that. And it goes and goes, and all of these shows are put on, and the attorney gets up there and he does his speech, and her attorney or his attorney gets up there and they do their oration and everything else. Those are all presentations, but they've already got that money into their accounts that they're earning interest on. You're not getting any of that. And in the end, such as a settlement for like a car accident or something injurious to you, you'll end up with 0.82% of all of it. The rest of it is tricked out, traded. You're the stock option, maintaining these stocks, and through that debenture participation program, you've got the tranches going. You're making loads and loads and loads of money. But in the end, you're going to get 0.82%, which doesn't even cover your legal fees. You already lost your butt. Oh, there's a Kentucky lawmaker fires gun in office, calls it a mistake. And this is on NBCnews.com.
Well, what was that woman, right?
Yeah, no charges are filed or anything. She just fired at the floor, didn't realize there was a bullet in the chamber, That's just sick. I think they're trying to vilify gun use, but I'd like everybody to realize what your politicians are. She's a retard with a gun. With a gun. Okay, yeah. She fired a gun inside of an office building.
She certainly doesn't know much about gun safety if she allowed that to occur.
Right, and again, we go back to...
It only takes one mistake with a gun.
Absolutely, and we go back to false flags. Here's a politician telling you that guns are dangerous. No, she's dangerous. She fired a gun inside of an office building. She needs to have her rights taken away because she's an infant.
This was House Representative Leslie Combs.
Right. And everybody needs to be aware of this. These are the people that you're allowing to represent you. They're retarded. And I'm not talking about a biological defect. Retarded means to stop or impede. She's impeded in some way. And there's something wrong with her mind. And you need to be aware of this. And instead of hollering for gun safety and gun bans, you need to take it out of the hands of retarded individuals that cannot handle guns safely. She is a danger to the community.
Right, but don't do this by asking Congress to pass laws to do it. Just
absolutely not.
Take care of it in your own capacity. You got to take care of your own neighborhood, well, your own house first, but then the neighborhood, you know. I mean, they've sold us the idea that we need all these people to pass laws and hire law enforcement with low IQ to, you know, basically, you know, it's just a horrifying situation. What we have happened just yesterday, I did a story on it. A Florida stepfather called 911 because his stepson wasn't taking his medication for his schizophrenia. Okay, and what happened? The cop came out there and shot him dead.
Yep. And they had the ability to do that was authorized by the parents when they called 911.
Sure.
And everybody needs to realize how terrifying that is. You call 911, they come out, they can do whatever they want to, especially if you are diagnosing each other. Now, that is an informant. That individual, whoever informed on that child, a baby, and said that they needed help because of the schizophrenia, yada yada, is an informant. And we had somebody do that last year, that Donna. And then she was mad at me after I told her, no, you assigned him. That's an assignment. You're telling the state, take my child. Yeah, she assigned her son. I'm familiar with that story. Right. I can't handle him. I'm not a parent. You be the parent. Okay, everybody needs to realize what's going on, because the minute you assign that child, you have given up every right, any and all right and access to that child, any and all, anything. You've given up interest as the assigner. You can find this in Black's Law Dictionary. It's called estoppel by assigner. And this is terrifying. And there's a dead child now based on that assignment and the actions of corporate counsel that you know, called out for this child's death. I think the whole situation took, 3 minutes? And they said it was within a minute and 40 seconds, something like that.
Well, I don't know. Something was suspicious about it to me, because they had 2 cops show up initially. Then a third cop, you know, came and was just, he was all, you know, tense and antsy. He said, I don't have time for this. He's the guy that shot the kid. Right, that's corporate counsel. So the first 2 had gotten there. They had de-escalated the situation. It was reported. The third one was called out by corporate counsel, and that one was the one that killed his child. That is based on the directives of corporate counsel. Corporate counsel initiated that third officer. And again, the story, I think, said it was within a minute and 40 seconds, something that the third officer was there and that child was dead. And everybody needs to be aware of what corporate counsel is doing. That was a culling of a human being, and they will be held accountable for these things. Of course, they're going to roll over on the cop. They've already vilified the cop in the news media. But you can see by the story itself that that was corporate counsel directing him. Yeah, I figured as much. It just didn't sound right. No, none of it's right. Because now the cop has to feel that he's killed a child based on the directives of corporate counsel. This is an unarmed child. And, you know, I am not blaming only corporate counsel here, and I will speak this for all the world to hear. Somebody informed on that child. And Hitler required this. Hitler required informants in order to meet and maintain policy and agenda quota. And that's what this Hitler requires as well. And if you are diagnosing each other, if you are informing on each other, this is what happens. Stop doing that. Jesus said brother will turn against brother, moms against daughter, dads against sons, you know, all of these things. And we're watching this happen. That is turning against your child. When you are informing on it, you're giving up your parental rights to somebody else. And boy, you covered a story this summer that was the same thing. They called 911 over a borrowed car that the father wanted back, although the child had borrowed it before. It's just this time it was taken for too long. And that child was also gunned down by law enforcement in protection of a vehicle. Yep. Yeah, and these things, look at what is happening, everybody. Look at what humanity has succumbed to.
and is doing as informants. Good news, 2 more charged in Met Council scam, New York, January 7th, 2014. This is on JTA.org. 2 former employees of the Metropolitan Council on Jewish Poverty were charged in the multi-million-dollar scam at the New York charity. Former Executive Director David Cohen and Chief Financial Officer Herbert Friedman were arraigned Tuesday in Manhattan criminal court on grand larceny, money laundering, and conspiracy charges. The New York Daily News reported they pleaded not guilty. According to the felony complaint, Cohen and Friedman told prosecutors they conspired with former Met Council Chief William Rapvogel to collect kickbacks on insurance payments. Rapvogel, a longtime Jewish communal professor who is also considered a major power broker in New York, was fired as Met Council president and CEO over the summer over this council's board of directors learned of financial irregularities. Now again, to corporate counsel. Do you see the cannibalism here? And this follows down to the Board of Commissioners. This is how it's all going to end. This is already written in Revelation. If you read this yourself and don't rely on the priests interpreting this for you, this is your demise. You're witnessing your demise. Now, these religious entities are rolling over on each other, maintaining titles. And this is only the beginning, folks. Everything is in insurance. Everything is facilitated by corporate counsel and the Board of Commissioners because they've been in a commissioned state since 1802, Indemnification Convention. And in this, everybody's going to be held accountable, from the commissioned states to the commissioned states, each commissioned state being law enforcement and everything else under letters of marque and reprisal. And it's all ending, folks. This is the Met Council scam, and they're taking each other out. Now, what happens now is up to you, especially you agents and you supporters and you useful idiots, useful innocents. If you are innocent, you can come to us and you can evidence their behavior, and we will protect you. We do not offer immunity if you're guilty of something. We offer immunity if you didn't know what you were doing and have just now realized that indeed you are harming or human trafficking or whatever else. But there is a line between guilt and innocence, and so of course the guilty, those who walk with intent, have no need to contact us. You already know what you are. It wastes my time and your time. The best thing you could do is to collect more skeletons on your peers than they have on you.
Yeah. Get behind me. Get thee behind me, Satan.
Absolutely.
Kind of bad news, kind of good news. The Rodman All-Star basketball team, I guess, ended up losing to the North Koreans in that exhibition game, 47-39.
Aww.
Before they mixed up the teams, and had the mix with North Koreans and former NBA stars. But in those guys' defense, they're in their 50s. They're getting up there, and these young North Korean guys, they taught them well. Rodman's a heck of a coach. He taught those guys, how to beat them. So
that's beautiful.
So I guess after the game today, they went to Kim Jong-un's ski resort and finished up. I guess they're finishing up the trip with some skiing. So sounds like a pretty nice time for him. And he's doing some great diplomacy, I think, over there that the State Department's not doing. So.
Well, that's beautiful. I had a question earlier in one of the classrooms regarding the word marshal. In Old English law, the title borne by several officers of state and of the law, of whom the most important were the following. 1, the Earl Marshal, who presided in the court of chivalry, the Marshal of the King's House, or Knight Marshal, whose special authority was in the King's place to hear causes between members of the household and punish faults. 3, the Marshal of the King's Bench Prison, who had custody of the jail. 4, the Marshal of the Exchequer, who had custody of the King's debtors. And we'll see you on Saturday, folks. Don't miss a single episode of Leaving the Farm right here on Revolution Radio. Support the station.
Thanks for having me, Tammy.